What is up, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay, narrator of The Gallant by Janie Wirtz. It's been a while since I've done a dedicated book review. I've been doing a lot of shorts and TikToks where I talk about different books that I've enjoyed, but this one, doorstopper of a book, and there was a lot more to say about it than what I could fit into a short. So today I'm going to be reviewing Kings of Paradise by Richard Nell, book 1 in the Ash and Sand trilogy. A thing once done held much less fear, as the mystery of the unknown vanished. Returning to Ash was just a dream. What is Ash but dust spread out over the field and streets in the wind? Like all thoughts, once he'd imagined it, it was strangely hard to change and impossible to forget. What do I want? Ruka put his hands to his awful face and closed his golden eyes, shuddering with what could have been a laugh or a sob. I want a world where love is not a crime, priestess. A world where children are not doomed to misery because they are different. I want only laws with mercy and justice and wisdom. But I will settle for your pink insides in my palm and your brains on a rock. So what did I think of this book? Brilliant. Absolutely mesmerizing. I started this all the way back in June, and this was kind of the book that I was reading on my Kindle app on my phone, you know, when I was out in public or when I was doing other things, and I was just reading this along with all the other books that I had in my TBR videos and stuff, but it wasn't like a planned book that I was like actively working towards finishing. I just, you know, read it as the mood struck me. And yeah, this completely captivated me, took me away. It was such a brilliant little self-pub book, so abnormal in its structure and the way it goes about, because the way this book is presented and the way that we are led to believe most fantasy stories go, and kind of what the synopsis on the back leads you to believe, you have these two characters. You have Ruka, son of Bela, who's this like demon-cursed child of a witch, or kind of, and he's prophesied to do great things. And then you have Kale, the fourth son, and kind of a layabout in the kingdom of Sri Khan, which is this like East Asian inspired culture. Ruka's culture is a lot more Viking inspired. And in a usual fantasy book, the elements of these two storylines would come together, you know, somewhere around the midway point, and you start to see these characters interact. And spoiler alert, this book does not really do that. Instead, you really follow these two characters on their own solo journeys, and only at the very end of the novel do you start to get hints that these two worlds are connected. So that being said, the strengths of this book, in my opinion, are the characterization of Kale and the characterization of Ruka. If you do not gel with either one of these two main characters, this book will probably not be a 5 out of 5, because it is not about a plot in which these two characters are wrapped up in each other. It's very much two plots going on within this book, one being Ruka's, one being Kale's. And there are other plots, and I'll get to those. But yeah, if you don't gel with either one of these plots, I think it could probably diminish your enjoyment of the book. I luckily enjoyed both perspectives. I do think Ruka is the more unconventional perspective and the one that will be the fan favorite. You know, he's like, I said in my Goodreads review, he's like 1 part Baez, 3 parts The Bloody Nine. And I stand by that. He's a very barbaric and ruthless character, but he's also super intelligent. And the way that his mind works and the way he frames things within his own, within what he calls the glade. It's this safe space he's created in his mind for him to hone his skills and learn different things, and to also escape from his body. Really captivating stuff, and really makes him stand out as a character, different than, you know, the Bloody Nine, different than someone like Baez. But he does have elements of those characters, and Abercrombie lovers are gonna love Ruka. I personally, me being a reader that loves heroes, I really enjoyed Kale. If you've read characters like Jezal Dan Luther or Jalan Kendeth from Red Queen's War by Mark Lawrence, you're familiar with the kind of jackassy character. Is a little pompous, a little full of himself, a little bit of a layabout. Kale is not that, though he does have his roots in that kind of character, but he quickly differentiates himself. This is a character that is very unsure of who he is and what his place is in this world. There's a lot more uncertainty, a lot less ego than someone like Jezzel, which I'm not the biggest Jezzel Dan Luther fan. Sorry. I love his son as a character. I don't love Jezzel. So if you like those sorts of characters, I do think you'll find something to like in Cale, though he is a bit more heroic. But he's got some faults. And I really enjoy, he's got a very romantic worldview. That's what really sets him apart from someone like Jessel. He has a very romantic worldview. And sometimes that, gets him into trouble, but I really loved his character. Now, where this book almost fell out of 5-star territory, because I did, this is such a weirdly structured review, but I did give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It's probably closer to a 4.75. And the main reason for that is there's a plot line that's introduced during the second act of the story, if you wanted to separate it into a 3-act structure. Around the 1/3 mark into this book, they do introduce another plot thread that it's somewhat related to Ruka's. It's in the same sort of landmass and in the same area as Ruka's plot lines, and it does kind of branch out from Ruka's plot lines, but you follow this character Dala and then her love interest Biruman. And I enjoyed both of these characters. That being said, they are not one iota as interesting as Cale and Ruka, and I think that will probably be most readers' reaction to Dala's storyline. Like, is she an interesting character? Yes. Does she stand on an equal footing with Ruka and Cale? Absolutely not. And you can kind of see like her plotline. I won't say it's dropped by the end of the book, but it's definitely given less prevalence than Cale and Ruka's. Cale's storyline went to some really interesting places near the end, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm gonna get into some spoilers. So for my final spoiler-free thoughts, if you like grimdark fantasy, if you like coming of age, if you like unconventional protagonists, then I highly recommend you check out book 1 in the Ash and Sand trilogy, Kings of Paradise. So, getting into spoilers. Crazy stuff, the way these two plot lines come together in the end, with Ruka sacking Sri Khan, seemingly killing Tain, Cale's older brother. Still reckoning with what I just read. I really just finished this today, like 20 minutes ago. And the betrothal to Lonnie, very interesting stuff. But I want to go back to earlier in the book and talk about, Ruka's growing up and just kind of his descent into this more Corbiantic bestial being that Eagle finds him as. You get to see his descent as Bela dies and perishes, and there's this enmity between him and the priestesses because it's their fault at the end of the day that his mother died. And he holds on to that hatred for a long, long, long time. And he feeds that hatred. And it's an all-consuming hatred. And it consumed the young boy. It consumed Bela's boy. And it left only Bakayak. And captivating character. I do love how Richard Nell, you still have Ruka perspective chapters later in the book, but he does dial back how much we are viewing Ruka's story through Ruka's eyes as the story progresses. We're getting more Eagle's POV of things, Dala's POV of things. We're viewing him from other perspectives, which I think really helps because his growth is really cemented by others' perception of him. And very captivating stuff. When you get that time jump and he kills, those boys that Dala was staying with, I thought Dala was going to join his cause, and then she went off and did her whole storyline, which, as I mentioned in the spoiler-free section, didn't love Dala's storyline. Didn't love it. I liked it. I thought it was well done. It felt a little convoluted at times with all the Nightmen stuff, but I liked seeing her climb amongst the priesthood, or, at least amongst her initiates who were going up to the priestesshood, and her kind of running that, but... Biruman's storyline was pretty cool after him and Dala split a little bit for a little while, him reclaiming the chieftainship. I say storyline, it was like 1 or 2 chapters. I did think it was a little far-fetched that he would killed this trained soldier and chieftain when he's only ever been a Nightman, but, it's fantasy. I've suspended my disbelief for far more. And then I guess I say the best for last. My favorite storyline by far was Kale's. I loved following Kale's. Now, I think a lot of people will read this and think Kale's story felt a little too repetitive, because it's like, okay, he goes to the Navy, he trains in the Navy, he goes to the monastery, he trains in the monastery, he goes to the Empire, he trains in the Empire. And, you know, if Richard Nell was not as great of a writer, and if Kale was not as captivating as a character, I do think this would have gotten repetitive and redundant and annoying. It didn't, though. It really didn't. I actually was captivated by every single second of him in the Navy. I was captivated by every single second of him in the monastery trying to get back to Lonnie. I was captivated every single second as he was training in the Empire, even though that was much shorter than the other sections, or at least it felt like to me. By the way, the whole section where he was like astral projecting into the other room to write the symbols, and then you have the added, like, if he fails this test then he won't be able to see Lonnie in time. Richard Nell had a perfect way of contriving these different scenarios where, like, Kale had to succeed. May not have been the end of the world if he didn't succeed or not, but it was the end of his world and what he viewed his existence as being. And it's just such a close and intimate third person perspective that we had with Kale that I was very invested in all of his exploits. And oh man, when he gets out of the monastery and then he goes to see Lonnie and then he has sex with her, TMI, doesn't pull out, then discovers that she was supposed to be betrothed to his older brother, which, by the way, Tane and Kale's relationship in here, so much fun. I love how good of a brother he was to Kale. I absolutely, if you cut me, I will kill. If you cut my brother, I will kill you. I love the way he would ride for his brother, even though his brother just cuckolded him in a way. Not really when you get the more lore and you find out that his brother's gay anyway, and that he didn't even know about the betrothal and he never had feelings for Lonnie. So not really, but yeah, I love their relationship. I love their brotherhood. I think Kale really needed that because his father blows. Bad guy, not a great guy. His relationship with Lonnie was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the friendships we started to peep into at the end of this book. His Empire friends, I forget their names. Let's see, Osna and Osco. Osna's really fun. He reminds me of Throat Slitter from the Malazan Book of the Fallen a little bit. And Osco is definitely like for the resistance. And yeah, it's fun seeing him make those connections. And I'm very, not to mention, he completely goes like Dayraven from the Adan trilogy by Philip Chase. Like, he just like reaches this enlightenment and is able to channel magic. Only it's a little bit different in the way it's perceived in this book, because, in the Adan trilogy, Dayraven is the most powerful person to use this sort of magic. And here, Kale is really the only person to have been able to tap into this kind of magic that we're aware of as the readers. And from what it appears to the reader, the only one within this world according to many different perspectives, because the Emperor doesn't think it's real. He's like, there's no way, like, miracles, what are we talking about? So yeah, Kale goes a little fantasy Jesus. I thought it was really great, the way Richard Nell wrote about this magic and stuff. I won't really say it's a magic system, but he does seem to channel these different primordial energies through meditation, through some sort of chi, some energy, spiritual energy. I'm not really sure how the magic works in here, but I did find it captivating as Kale sort of discovered this. There is no like mentor who's also a sorcerer who taught him. He learned many things from many different people, and I think that's why it was so important to see him train with the Navy, with the monastery, with the Empire, because he was able to put all these puzzle pieces together and become a sorcerer. Yeah, really excited to read. What's book 2? Kings of Heaven? I don't even know what book 2 is called. But book 2 in the Ash and Sand trilogy. I'm very much looking forward to continuing this trilogy. I might audiobook books 2 and 3 because I don't own them physically. But yeah, really had a great time with Richard Nell's first book in his Ash and Sand trilogy. If you've read it, I'm assuming you have if you've lasted this far. Let me know what you thought of it. And as always, stay safe, guys. Peace.